Ladies and gentlemen, seekers of light and secret knowledge wherever you may be, you are listening to Points of Light Radio, the podcast dedicated to taking you past the apron and behind the closed doors of lodges everywhere. And here is your host, Stan Miller.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Shalom. Assalamu alaikum. It's wonderful to be back here with you on Points of Light Radio and continuing our journey. Where would you like to go today, and what would you like to learn about? How about we go to the United Kingdom and shed some light on a very little-known organization? I can almost guarantee you've never heard of it. That organization is called the Order of the Lily and the Eagle. Now, just to give you some background, the Order of the Lily and the Eagle was founded in Cairo, Egypt, in January of 1915 by Marie Rouchine Dupré, with the assistance of Demetrius Plato Samalas. I hope I pronounced those names right. I'll let my guest explain who they were. Now, the Order of the Lily and the Eagle's vision is to establish love and reciprocity in humanity. Now, this is achieved in the following three ways, and I'm quoting directly from their website. So it's achieved the following three ways. Number one, the personal instruction of each member so that he or she may develop a free and independent personality. Number two, the practice of material, psychic, and intellectual solidarity or charity to all who are suffering. And number three, the development and dissemination of a universal code of social organization inspired by observing and studying nature and its laws. I'll allow my guests to shed more light on those three ways there. But the motto of the Lily and the Eagle is love and reciprocity established in the heart of humanity. That sounds very deep, actually. And I will be blunt, this is a very deep organization that we're looking at today. And we will probably only be able to scratch the surface but hopefully my guests can really shed some light on this. And my guest for this segment of Points of Light Radio is Kevin Pugh. He is the General Governor of the Order of the Lily and the Eagle, acting as commander of the Commandery of Attica in the West. This is going to be rather intriguing. So let's go talk to Mr. Pugh. But as I always ask you, are you still searching for the light? Are you still hungry for knowledge? Then just trim your lamp and follow me. Mr. Pugh, welcome to Points of Light Radio.
This is my first Zoom ever.
Oh, no. Well, well, then go easy on me. Yeah. How are you this morning?
That's what I should be saying. Yes, it's a bit dark over here. We're coming into the fall, as they would say. We're coming into autumn. But yes, it's good. It's good over here. Excuse me while I have my coffee.
Knock yourself out. Yeah. So you're a member of the Order of the Lily and the Eagle. Why don't you tell my listeners and viewers about yourself?
If I tell you how I came to join the OL&E, which will give you some idea.
Okay.
My background is, let's say, very scientific. Physics, chemistry, mathematics. And I guess that was to do with the fact that I wanted to find certainty in my life. So in that search for certainty, I was going for a scientific method. I was a voracious reader. You name it, I've read it, kind of thing, or in the past. Not so much now. And I lived in Greece for 10 years, and just as I was about to leave Greece, I met up with Mr. George, who ended up being my initiator in the OL&E. And I liked the man. He'd spent some time in Scotland. And he kind of sort of said, well, this is what we do, la-di-da-di-da. Now, I was very dubious because I've come across those kinds of groups in the UK previously. So I was very suspicious, let's put it that way. And but what he was saying made a lot of sense, clarified some things for me in my head. So I was asking him, I said, okay, if you say I should join the order, how much will it cost me? And he said, only your time and effort.
Okay.
And I went, oh, okay. Now, what about the college that you've got down in Agiou Melodiou, which is a road in Athens? They ran a college every week. And I said, well, you know, how's that paid for? I knew that it was rented. And he said, yes, he said. We have a director and a president, 5 officers, and then that group has about 10 people. Let's say it's about 17 people. I said, okay. Now the rent is 200,000 drachmas a month. I said, okay. So we divide it by 19. I said, well, hang on. You said 17 people. We divided by 19. What's going on? And he went, yes, well, the president and the director, a male and a female, that run the college, they pay twice the amount than the members. And I went, okay. My little brain went, yeah, I like that. Then he turned to me and said, this is the right understanding of hierarchy. More responsibility, the more you should be paying.
Yeah, sacrifice. Yeah.
So instead of the usual way it's a nice way of making money out of the members. It's the other way around, because some members were so poor in Athens, the director and the president would actually pay for their part, their rent, if you want, for the college. So that's where I came from, very suspicious. I thought, no, I don't, it's all this weird handshake stuff and don't like it. And in the end, I became very attracted to the whole thing because it seemed to have the right mentality behind it, which was the right idea of hierarchy, which I'd never thought of it that way, but it kind of made sense to me. Yeah. I mean, that kind of gives you a good idea.
Yeah, and it does make a lot of sense that it's not, the idea of hierarchy, the people higher up should be there to serve. That's really that makes sense. Yeah. But you've been a member for how long?
That conversation was summer of 1993. And a few months after that, I went back to Britain. So yes, I studied as an adherent in the order from then. But actually, Mr. George came over to Scotland because his children were still in Linlithgow, which is in Scotland, and we did the ritual of initiation, which was the membership. But it's a bit more than that, because a ritual has a lot to do with the idea of making an appeal to the invisible to help the adherents on the very difficult journey that they're undertaking. Not that I thought that, I was very unconscious, complete, I don't know, lambs to the slaughter, you could almost say. I was quite, oh, isn't this nice? Yes.
Yeah.
So I drove up to Scotland, and it was quite a revelation. There was an incredible sense of joy and happiness. It's like going home. Other people have other feelings. My initiator said to me, I had the idea in my initiation, he was initiated in Cairo, said, I had this idea that if you give your word, you must keep it. So that was the feeling he got in his initiation. But mine was just a sense of this, yes, happy. Then again, maybe I was on some drugs. Who knows? It's very strange.
Yeah, but you had the feeling that this is the right thing to do. When it's your time type thing.
I think I can say that there's always been in the back of my mind that I was here, incarnated, as I would say now, for a very good reason.
Yeah.
I had no idea what it was. And in a sense, it was just like everything I've been doing with this thing, because by then I'd covered the first and second theorems of the teaching that the foundress of the order left us. And it just made sense. It kind of started organizing all the JF, you name it, UFOs, all this kind of stuff that I'd read about, or even in science, it all started going on a skeleton. It all started going into place. And that's a very happy feeling when you start understanding things. And the main thing was analogy. To understand that you could draw understanding in one area into another. So what you're feeling and what you're thinking, two different areas. You can't really compare an idea to a feeling, but you can get some correspondences between the two and start to understand what's going on inside of you and also inside other people.
And this is a scientist saying this. I find this interesting.
Yeah,
well, that's interesting. Yeah.
The scientist who was very much, what you on about? There's no such thing as the spirit. There's no such thing as the soul. What are you on about? Rubbish. Well, that's the scientist.
Maybe I shouldn't say this, but the Bible even says that the carnal mind is enmity with God or with the spiritual. You have to approach these things outside of that. And when you approach them from outside of that, the two really tie in quite well together, don't they? Wouldn't you agree?
Well, maybe I should just add a little comment that my initiator said to me. And he said, yes, my dear. He was Greek. Yes, my dear. It remains to be seen, he said, if you will overcome your scientific training.
See? Yeah.
So science is very good because it says, here's an idea, let's test the idea, and what do we discover?
Yeah.
Spirituality, maybe I need to explain what that means to me, but anyway, spirituality follows the same process because we're using the same faculties that we have in order to discover something.
Yes.
There's no difference. The human being doesn't have, right, today we're going to be spiritual. And I've come across Christian groups who are very good weekend Christians, but during the week, they're not.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which is, I get it. It offended me when I was, 17, walking down the street, and the person who was all Christian on a Sunday towards me, but ignored me
Yeah.
on the Monday when I was walking up the street and he saw me. It was just like, oh, other side of the road kind of thing.
But
So
you're studying these principles, and as they say, sometimes some things are true whether we believe them or not. And I think sometimes when we approach things through a scientific or a facts basis, like you talk about UFOs and things, some of those things are real whether we believe them or not.
but you see, again, the scientists, say 20 years ago, would have rebelled.
Yeah.
But in my little mind, there's doubt. And doubt sort of says, well, how do you know? How do you know that, Kevin? How do you know it's rubbish? So on the one hand, there's this sort of, oh, get rid of it, that's rubbish. And then on the other side, there's this battle going, yeah, but you don't know everything, do you?
Yeah.
And I could, again, with my initiator, he would explain something to me. He said, you know, well, you incarnate and you gather a layer of spirit, a layer of soul, and then you have a body. And he said, so what do you think, Mr. Kevin? What do you think, Mr. Kevin? And I go, to be honest with you, Mr. George, we were very formal, you see. He just went, oh, well, that's a good answer. You don't know. That's a very good start. And if you don't know something, you don't know it.
Yeah.
And again, it's honesty with yourself. So the path of initiation actually is the path of self-initiation. It's not something that you're learning in a book, because the theorems that Maria left us essentially are like signposts. I don't know, you're in Canada, I assume.
Yeah.
Edmonton. And if I say, okay, how do you get to Ontario? So it would be, okay, you get onto the main high road and then you go, take a left, go right. You don't really want the whole detailed bit by bit. You're just given, follow the sign to, now head east.
Yeah.
Same for me in Scotland. You know, I don't need to know that you've got to go right at the old Dun Cow pub.
Yeah.
And then go, you know, some people give directions by pubs in Britain, how to get around the country. I don't need that. I just need look in that direction. And that's what the theorems are doing. So roughly, the first theorem is saying every individual is dissimilar. You've got a personality, but you're dissimilar. And you think, yeah, great, tick. Wrote 14 pages on it because I wanted to be clear with George, whose English wasn't very good, the meaning in English of what I was writing. So I was very meticulous, scientific, you know, this is this word and this is what it means, and to help him, not to help me, really, it was him. And I suddenly discovered that actually, this is really quite interesting. This is true. We are all dissimilar. We're similar, but we're dissimilar. We have things that are common because every parent in the world worries for their child.
Yeah.
That's a similarity. What you do with that worry is different from person to person, depending on which country you're in, how much money you have, all these kinds of things. So you have an environmental factor and you have the individuals themselves.
Yeah.
So you suddenly start, okay, that's what's going on inside of me. And because they seem to have the same things that I do, they're thinking, yeah, we can all agree we think. They have feelings, emotions, yeah. And if I stick a needle in everybody, they'll go, ouch. So they have sensations as well. And that's the basis that we start from. So what is spirit? It's the thing that allows you to think and reason. All the stuff that we do in our head is our spirit. So even making a cup of tea, as the Japanese will show you, they have a teeth ceremony, which is very spiritual because you had to plan it. I want a cup of tea. What do you want? What type of tea? Sorry, it's an English example.
Yeah.
We like our tea.
Yeah.
So it's a spiritual act. You have an idea, you have to work out the details, and then you do it. That is a spiritual act. So it isn't necessarily some sort of mystical thing. Every moment of the day, we are doing spiritual things. And that was a revelation to me, because it was somehow spiritual was over there.
Yeah. It's not the way out. Yeah.
You know, it's what we are. We're spiritual beings. And the soul is the thing that allows you to have emotions, to feel. Okay? And, okay, there's a structure to these things, and the lines aren't clear-cut. Unfortunately, the scientists would like to make a nice, clear line between the soul and the spirit. But there's another step you can take. You have the tools, you're born with the tools to interact with the environment, the body, to have emotions, the soul, and to think. What is using those tools? So you have a mind that uses the spirit to think about a particular thing. So we're all similar because we have a spirit, but we are dissimilar because we think in different ways.
Yeah. Okay.
This is the freedom that we have to think in different ways, and this is what we should be rejoicing. But a lot of systems want you to conform to a particular way of thinking, a particular way of feeling, even looking. And this is completely contrary to the laws of nature, because the law of dissimilarity, which is the basis of this idea, is everywhere. And it's so obvious.
Yeah.
That people just think, oh, yeah. They don't pay it attention. Don't worry, this has taken me nearly 20 odd years to get into my little head, you know, and actually apply it. Because it's one thing to have the knowledge. The next big step is to apply it. If you don't apply it, it's a meaningless thing.
Well, what are the requirements for membership in the Order of the Lily and Eagle?
Basically, someone who's of goodwill.
Okay.
Who has inside of them the sense that they want to help other people.
Okay.
And usually what happens, because my particular formation, the formation that I work for or work with, essentially is internet based. Originally, the idea was that you collect people local to you and you would start colleges and what have you. I've taken a different approach and thought, well, let's use the internet. It's a fantastic resource and is a representative of the soul, because it's the thing that connects us right across the world. And by using that, I have people coming from Portugal, Canada, some people in Ottawa, New York, Malaysia, right across the world, Germany, France. The point is that the very few people, but they get attracted by the basic message that we have of love and reciprocity in the heart of humanity. And they like it. Some people come because they think we're a Rosicrucian, that we've got a secret. Oh yes, you've got a secret. And I'm going, no, we don't have a secret, because the secret is out there around you. If you could understand the creation, nature, that is where the secret is. And it's in plain sight. But they, no, you must have a secret. And what documents do you have? And what rituals do you do? And all this kind of stuff. It's like, no. It's applied philosophy. We have some ideas, and if you agree with them, and only if you agree with them, then you're free to apply them to yourself.
Okay. So you say you say you meet in colleges, but you have an internet-based college, it sounds like.
Don't run Zoom meetings and what have you. Essentially, at the moment, it's all done using email. I'm old school, I'm afraid. But essentially, there is in my opinion, there's a benefit for giving people something to chew on and then to write about what they feel, because through the process of writing, you end up discovering the holes in your logic.
Yeah, I agree with that.
These things. Whereas if it's spoken, most people don't take notes, right? And they come away with what they think they heard or what they would have liked to have heard, rather than actually what was said. With George, even in my initiation, the ritual, I was making notes, and I could see him looking at me going, well, no, you can put that down now. You need to put it down now. We'll talk about it afterwards. Don't worry. We will cover it afterwards. So it was my natural nature to just write it down, because I know how easy it was for me to misunderstand what was going on or what was said. So, yes, it's nice to have open forums and people talking and what have you. Podcasts are quite good. We seem to get a response to podcasts. But fundamentally, by writing it down and then me absorbing it and saying, yeah, you got the basic idea, but have you thought about that? Not to say you have to learn about that, just have you thought about that and the impact that has? They're trying to just push the envelope for these people to think further. So what's behind that, do you think? It's that continual sort of discussion that you can take with an individual, because each individual is different. So you can't have a universal learn that.
Yeah.
You could argue that the theorems are doing that. Okay. And it's a valid point. But every theorem is universal. So it's not specific to Maria, who was a female. So no men could understand what she was talking about. No, she wrote about things that were universal to every human being. And that, for me, is like a signpost. Go and have a look at that. Discover what you can. So yes, in Athens, certainly in Athens, and it was Paris, but in Perpignan, in the French Mediterranean, the French branch exists, and there's there's several in Athens. It's about three different branches of the order.
But
I don't want to get into the politics of
I understand
this group and that group.
Do you have a degree system in the?
There are 7.
Okay.
Starting from adherent and going up to the big honto, the big leader, the big cheese.
Mm-hmm.
The supreme. Well, there should be 2. A female who represents the teaching of love, and there should be a male who represents the teaching of wisdom.
Okay.
And they're supposed to be the sovereign commanders of the order, because they have to understand that beyond them, there are the supreme commanders in the invisible, if I can use that phrase.
That's fine, yeah.
So they're sovereign, just like there's a sovereign king or queen who represent, the big god or whatever. The other factor is, if you want to join, you really do need to have a sense of something that's greater than yourself. Now, I had, in my first meeting with George, he said to me, "So do you believe in God?" And I went, "What do you mean by God?" And then he said, "Do you believe in something that's greater than yourself? Something that's beyond your being?" And I kind of, "Yeah, I do." He said, "Well, that's good, because if you don't believe in that, initiation is sterile. It won't go anywhere. Because the real sense of there is something or some body, well, it's not really a body, an entity, let's say. I mean, we don't have the words for these things, but anyway, there's something that we can't see that is not us, that has some sort of hand on us." And here's a scientist, quite weird, really. There's a little voice in here rebelling. No, you're talking rubbish. And another one's saying, "Yeah, but it's true." Because on numerous occasions, things happen to me, and it's just like, well, I needed to have that happen to me. So it's one of the questions I said to George is, "George, why do they keep moving the goalposts? I'm just about to lean against the goalpost. And suddenly it's gone." He said, "Yes, my dear. If they didn't do that, we wouldn't do anything."
Exactly. A purpose to every life, a time and a season. That's right. But let's go through the goals of the Order of the Lily and the Eagle. You want to establish love and reciprocity in humanity. You've mentioned that, but it's achieved three ways: the personal instruction of each member so that he or she may develop a free and independent personality. So let's talk about that. How do you do that?
How long do you have?
Well, in capsule.
It really depends on the person. So that there isn't a algorithm. You put people in one end, turn the handle, and out comes free and independent. But let's take it. Free is the basis of the whole thing. You cannot impose on the person as the initiator. You have a soul in your hand, a very delicate one, that you're trying to encourage to discover who and what they are. So this is the basis of Socrates. Man, know thyself. So how do you do that? Well, you can do it through the theorems. So going through the theorems is like a self-education, a self-initiation. But I can't say to this person, no, you've got it wrong, it's this way. That would be a violation of that person's freedom. So what happens is you get a load of leaders, initiators, who are collecting acolytes, and you end up with a group of people who think and act the same way. And that's against the first theorem, which is they should be dissimilar. Right? So you're trying to educate people to think for themselves, to have their own feelings, to act in the way they want to act. So you can see many examples of when you're a child, and I can remember my nephew in Greece. We went on a little roller coaster. So I was sitting here and he was sitting there. And it wasn't a big drop, but for him it was something he'd never felt before.
Yeah.
The adrenaline rush, you see. So little Angelos was sitting there going, I don't know what this is. What did this little thing do? Little Angelos immediately looked at the adult to see how he should interpret this thing that was going on inside of him. Adrenaline rush. So I could see that happening, and this was before I was in the order. I could see this happening, so I kind of went, yeah! And he immediately went, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Shouldn't be afraid. You see, this is the same thing with initiates, because I've got one guy who's from San Paulo who's working in Northern Ireland for Amazon.
Wow.
Right? How can I possibly have any sense of this person? Because I was born in the Midlands in Britain, travelled to Athens, came all the way back, still live in the Midlands, but my parents were Welsh, and. How? There's no way I can have a match up and tell him what he should be doing. But what I can do is to say, have a look at this theorem. What do you think? Tell me about your own experiences. And then I will put in some of my own experiences and say, well, this is what I noticed. You don't have to take it. It's just what I've noticed. At the end of the day, what you think, what you feel, and how you act is for you. And it's amazing. Some people will stay 3 or 4 theorems, and then they'll go, this is too much like hard work. Bye-bye. But it has an effect, because the first 4 theorems, I would say, is not only a lifetime's work, it's probably 3 or 4 lifetimes' work, because it's undoing all the crap that we've been imprinted with from birth. So poor lucky Angelos, he didn't end up with a fear of heights, because I gave him a response that was acceptable, and he quite happily will go high. Whereas I, as a child, was freaked out because I could see that my mother was scared of heights, and she imprinted it on me. So I had to go through a daily exercise in Athens, where I used to go up onto the 4th floor and look down and then battle with all those little voices inside of me going, oh, you're going to fall over the edge. And then when I said, no, there's a railing, and it's nice and strong. And then another voice will say, oh, but your glasses will drop out of your top pocket.
Big deal. They're just glasses, yeah. Well, let's look at the practice of material, psychic, and intellectual solidarity or charity to all who are suffering. How do you achieve that?
Yes, in essence, we have a spirit, we have a soul, we have a body. We can be enslaved physically, and most of us are familiar with that. We can be enslaved emotionally and mentally. So the fanatics of the world, in a sense, are enslaved, because they're tied to a ideology or religion or a belief system without any thought. So in going through the theorems, it allows you to understand that you need to liberate. In fact, it's the process of liberation, to liberate your thoughts, your emotions, and your physical being. So yes, charity is when somebody is suffering physically, you offer to help. Doesn't mean I'll say, yes, we'll take your help, but your heart should be towards helping people. And you could say this is a sign of a person when you see that they have that within them. Because behind the physical act, there has to be an emotion of, I want to help. I see something or somebody suffering. And there is a mental state. So this is a way of expressing love. And love comes in three flavors. There's a physical one, erotic love. There's a agape, as they call it in Greek, which is emotional love. And then you have mental love, which is fellowship. And all those three give you a good idea of what love is. And we're trying to promote it for not just ourselves, but everybody around ourselves. But it's difficult to do that at the beginning because you don't suddenly read Theorem 1 and that's it, done it. It's taken me, as I said, at least 20 years to get my head around it.
Yeah.
And another 20 years to actually do something about it, you know.
You have to practice that stuff every day. So, and let's talk about that third way that you establish that, which is the development and dissemination of a quote unquote universal code of social organization inspired by observing and studying nature and its laws. Okay, now let's talk about this. How do you achieve that? And what is this universal code? This is one that's going to get a lot of people's attention.
If I'm brutally honest, I've got no idea.
Okay.
So if we unstitch that a little bit, so there are laws of nature which are essentially following the progression of numbers or geometrical shapes, or there are various ways of looking at it. So you've got the law of unity, duality, or binary, ternary, or trinity, quaternary, and so on. Okay, so the first four laws give you the idea of unity. Where do you find unity in nature? Because these laws are meant to be in nature. Okay? Don't accept what I'm telling you, go and look for them. So the answer, in a sense, is you could say that the earth is a unity. It's not the total unity, but it is a unity that is working with itself, within itself. The human body is a unity. It's a rough idea, but it's not really a true idea of what unity should be. Duality, we see it everywhere because whenever you've got hot, you need to start looking for the opposite. Cold, heat, sour. In fact, we can only explain things to people through duality. This is what's behind some of these koans, you know, what is the sound of one hand clapping?
Yeah.
Answer, nothing, because you need a duality to make the sound. And what came out was a third thing. And that third thing was a sound, and that is the law of ternary, the law of three. And that's why everything that we try and do will contain at least 3 steps, which is what do you want to do? How are you going to do it? Do it. And if any one of those 3 steps is not done, we act in a chaotic way. We just go off and think about it. You have to add in your feelings, and then you do it. So
That's
this
why
is
so many
how
people never achieve anything, because they don't put those 3 together.
Yeah, well, you see,
one or two of them.
when we do the theorems, there are 3 steps. Analysis, which I go overboard. Analysis of, and this and this. Yeah. And then it's the next step is putting it back together. The synthesis, because what are your conclusions? You've done this beautiful analysis, Kevin. But back to the conclusions. So people mainly do one, not even that sometimes. They rarely do step 2, the synthesis, the conclusions. And then the third step, which is the real secret, which little children know, but us adults don't know. Astasis, which in Greek it means exercise.
Yeah.
If you don't do the exercise, you're never going to change anything. But if you watch a kid, they do the analysis. Well, what's this? What's it taste like? Kids will just discover something, and then they'll start learning about, well, oh, it bounces. Okay. But they don't really understand it. So they'll keep doing it until they go, yeah, I know what a ball's going to do. And they're exercising to break it. Will it break? No, it keeps.
Yeah.
There's a thing that keeps pulling the ball down. They don't know what it is, but they discover it. Whereas we're adults and we've read the book and we know that there's gravity, right? But when you hit 60 and you jump out of a tree like a 4-year-old, you break your leg.
Yeah,
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas a kid will know.
Yeah.
So they discover the world. We stop them discovering.
Oh, I agree.
So as a parent, as an initiator of your little child, you should be giving the child dissimilarity. The world is different. Accept difference. Be happy with difference.
Would you not agree that's where the education system gets into it, where, and I've heard this said before, we take these kids that are full of energy, enthusiasm, and intuition, we put them at a desk in a school and we go, now sit here, this is what we expect you to do, and this is, you know what I mean? We knock all that out of them. By the time they've been there 8-10 years, they're just like robots now. Maybe that's by design, though.
There's a little poem, which I can't remember all of it, but it goes, school taught me to write my name, to recite the answers, to wait in line, to kiss the rod, to be on time and trust in God, to make me a model citizen. That was their goal. But I don't know about that. But it was useful training for a career on the dole.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, we don't allow, I mean, yes, children, unfortunately, suffer from generations of imprints. What happened to your great grandfather is still being propagated on these children. Why? Because society has to be the way society has to be. You're born into this particular group, this part of the country, with this amount of money, and. You know, all those things are imprinted on human beings right from the word go. And we don't mean to do it to other people, but we do.
Sometimes we subconsciously,
Yeah, I mean, children obviously will look to the adult for guidance. How do I act here? What should I be feeling? What should I be thinking? Right? It's natural. So the parent, without realizing it, are basically saying, oh, well, we've always done it this way, so that's the way we do it. I can't think of an example offhand, but what then happens is the child absorbs that in them before the critical 7 years old. Because at 7, the brain of the child is completely rewired, but all that low-level stuff is still in there, very deep.
Yeah.
That, you know, you can put hatred into your child for another group of people. I mean, I'm just amazed. There are ethnic Romanians in Hungary, and they want to be part of Romania, but the Romanians hate them because they're not really Romanians.
Yeah.
And it's just a human being. Where's the unity?
Yeah.
You know, where's the love? You know. So the process is the laws of nature. So you've got the laws of nature, 1, 2, 3, you know, and the esoteric group will say, you need 3 lines to draw a triangle. Yes, the first form of geometry. You know. Yes, that's true. But actually, that out of 2 things, male and female, a third thing is produced, which is different, a child.
Mm-hmm.
It's just all over in nature, but we don't notice it. That then suggests a universal code of acting one towards the other.
Mm-hmm.
Because a teaching is only useful if it is applicable to the world, to society. So if society was all geared up to follow these laws of nature, and I cannot prove it because it's never been done, but if it were done, I could imagine that there would be harmony throughout humanity, because there wouldn't be, let's hate this group, let's, exploit them and all that kind of thing. It would be, they have a need, we need to help them. It's a long way down the road. So let's take schools. You brought that up. That's very interesting. So in our colleges, which essentially is a school, we have a female and a male leading the college. So every school should have a male teacher and a female teacher in every lesson. Why? Because there is a different perspective from the female side, from the male side. And every child should be made aware of those differences.
Yeah.
Even just having a male teacher, which is pretty rare these days.
It is, yeah.
Is, it's good. They say in Britain that if you've got a black teacher, then the black kids immediately do better. Not because, it's a black teacher and black teachers are better, simply because they've got a role model.
Exactly.
And there we have again this effect of society on each and every one of us. You can imprint on somebody bad things as well as good things. So having a black teacher actually imprints a good thing on black kids. I mean, it's fairly basic stuff, but we don't do it.
No.
And we come back to that third step. We're not doing the exercise. So yes, we can give money to somebody who's on the side of the road, or we can go and buy them some food, which is a better thing to do. Here's a corn on the cob or whatever to eat. But also their heart and their mind also need feeding. So what does the soul want? It wants love. It wants beauty. You have to feed it the things that it needs. The same with the mind. You have to give them something that will make them think for themselves, not just swallow this.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? So the teaching should be, according to the zero theorem, it isn't, but I call it the zero theorem, freedom. And I don't wish to disparage everybody in every formation, Martinist, Amorc, Rosicrucians, all that lot. But essentially, they're not really following freedom as a basic tenet, because we should be making free and independent personalities. And a personality is not free because it's completely full of all the stuff that society has put on us. Our parents, our schools, our country, all these things, they tie us down, because we're a spiritual being, but we don't act like a spiritual being. Because we're full of I've got to get money. I've got to earn money. I've got to chase money. I've got money.
Mm.
Right? Quite forgetting that. So I did an experiment, right? I was earning a nice income. I was a software engineer, doing very well. Thank you very much. But in those 10 years, I never had a holiday.
Oh.
Because I was going, I'm afraid if I don't have a job, I won't have money. And if I don't have money, what's going to happen to me? Right. So I thought, okay, I'm going to stop doing software engineering and I'm going to do therapy. I'm going to do massage, kinesiology, Bowen therapy, all that kind of thing. But you don't get paid a lot to do that. But I learned a lot from interacting with people, listening to their problems. But the most important thing, I discovered I didn't need that much money.
No, it's amazing.
I thought, oh my God, I can quite happily live with £6,000, which at that time, 2004, would be about 12 now, given inflation. God knows what else. So it was just like, oh my God, I really don't need a huge amount of money. Not many people would have done that. They would have carried on for the rest of their life chasing money.
Yeah. And feeling that emptiness inside.
They're not happy.
And I've always felt like, I've always said that in my case, I remember living in a beautiful big house at one point in my life, 2 cars in my double car garage. I mean, and I never felt more empty in my life. One of the most desirable neighborhoods, but I've never felt more empty in my life than I did at that point. And it was, and 2 years later, I was living in this little ramshackle house, making less than half the money, and listening to myself whistle on my way to work. Like, I was like, wow, you just let that go, man. Like, you just let it go. It was just things.
See, one of the things that George said to me right at the, I call him George now, he's gone, bless him. But in the end, he called me Kevin and I called him George. Yeah. So we got past the formality of Mr. George and Mr. Kevin. And that sort of mentality of chasing money, it was quite interesting because he was working for Echo, which was Esso, the petrol company in Athens. He did a 6-day week from 6 until maybe 8 in the evening. And I looked at him and I thought, how the hell did you find any time for your family and for the teaching of the order? Because he actually was, an initiator. In fact, during the junta years, he was the front man representing the order in Athens. And they were allowed, for some unknown reason, to continue their work. The Masons were shut down, the Martinists were shut down, but the Order of the Lily of the Eagle was allowed to continue working during the years of the junta. So George had some very good qualities. He applied it. And the last time I saw him, and this, I'll never forget it, I came down, he was going into Edinburgh Hospital for radiotherapy. He had a cancer in his neck like that.
Oh, man.
And so he was going in for treatment. So I came down, we had our breakfast, cup of tea, and he sat down and then he looked at me and said, right, now we're going to do our exercises. 84-year-old. Aleph, Beth, Gimel, and he was reciting the Hebrew alphabet. Why? Because he wanted to learn Hebrew.
Wow.
I was just going, oh my God. And I can't even get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
So happiness was one of the things he said. We are free to be happy. But the question is, how to be happy?
Yeah.
And the answer is, if you know who you are, what you have inside of you, then you can be happy because you know what to feed yourself. So I discovered I don't need a huge amount of money. Get rid of it. Boom.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I don't earn money.
Yeah.
I do. We have to live. But it's not the important thing anymore.
You're not chasing it. That's right. That's absolutely right.
So now I can be happier than I was before. And then the next step, hopefully I'll be happier again.
Yeah.
And if you're happy, actually a lot of things just disappear.
Just melt away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Be happy.
Because I do know that even Christ said to his followers, you don't take thought for tomorrow. Tomorrow will take thought for the things of itself. And it's very true. That's very biblical. What are the plans for the order? Where does the order intend to go? Are they...
I don't know. Different... if I say Athens and Pangrati will continue with the model that they have, what they essentially... Well, I think Pangrati has become fairly ceremonial. I'm not sure if they are actually doing initiation work.
Yeah. But are there colleges all over the world?
It's localized.
Okay.
Athens, so Daphne is an area in Athens which essentially affiliates with Perpignan, the French group. And so essentially, up until 1957, there was a chain of command, let's say, from Marie to Dimitri Semalas, to Agathos, Dupre, who was Marie's husband. He got killed just after the Normandy landings.
Wow.
1944, I think it was, or 43, 44. And eventually it was then transferred to Agathos, who was in Cairo. Agathos is Greek. Nasser threw all the foreigners out, and the Greeks returned back to Athens. And Pangrati was where the commandery / colleges was located. When Agathos died in 57, he decreed that the leadership of the order should go back to the dual leadership. So there should be a female and a male at the head of the order. Then what happened, there was a schism, and we ended up with the female line in France and the male line in Athens.
Okay.
And since then, I don't think we can say there's been a number one grade for people at the top. Each group, each formation claims their own leadership formation. Athens will carry on doing the teaching in colleges. Well, in theory, they're meant to do the first 15 theorems, according to Agathos, 1-to-1. Because you don't want groups of people coming together, comparing notes and say, oh, well, we should think this way.
Yeah.
You don't want that. You want them to be isolated in a free environment with a free initiator, someone who doesn't impose their belief system on somebody.
Yeah.
And when they're ready, they can come into a group and then interact in a proper manner as a free and independent person. That doesn't seem to happen, because at one time, Pangrati was actually, they had a year college to see if you were ready to join.
Oh, wow.
Then you would then go in to the order, and they would only teach one theorem in a year. So that would take 36 years.
Yeah.
Right? That's not the way it should be done. You know, some people will drink up this information. They're ready for it. There are other people that you have to kind of prod and, you know, get them moving. But I've seen miraculous changes in some people. And I thought, oh my God, how did that happen? And it just happens because it opens up things inside the person. They self-realize for themselves. And it changes them in a way that I could never imagine. You know, I've heard, you know, I don't know why you waste your time with this person, Kevin. They're nuts. So, no, you don't. And George said to me once, he said, Mr. Kevin, you never know what the entity is that's standing before you.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of scratched my head and went, well, what does that mean, George? And he said, well, there are members of a higher group. Let's say in the hierarchy, there's a spiritual hierarchy, a family. Okay, and this family are incarnated at this level, but they don't get a special pass. They have to suffer the same laws that every human being goes through. They have to find out who and what they are, or as we say it, find their personality. Because your personality, how you express yourself, should be a reflection of your entity. But because of all the crap that's in between, we don't express our higher entity. We express our lower entity, our lower ego, which is all about money, accumulation, more. Whereas the higher entity is saying, look, somebody's drowning, jump in that raging river and save them.
Yeah.
And you do it. And you think, why did I do that? Because that impulse came through. You've got to save this person. So many things that you have to strip away to find out what your entity is. So you might be standing in front of a really high entity.
Yeah.
But because they haven't discovered what they are, morons.
Mm-hmm.
And there's plenty of those around who've got tremendous power because you can see them in politics and, sports and what have you. But they don't know who or what they are, and they can do a lot of damage. So I don't think that Putin is necessarily, a member of the higher spiritual family, but he's an example of somebody who's done a tremendous amount of damage. Is he a member of a higher entity? He could be. I don't know. And in fact, George said to me, yes, sometimes these beings come and they do tremendous damage because they have to go through the same laws that we go through. So, and we, I mean, us human beings, whatever that means, but we have to struggle to uncover what we are. So, but nevertheless, there are certain signs that we notice about people. So you've got a Mandela or a Gandhi who were very interested in justice or injustice. So if somebody has that within them, you can say, oh, okay, well, that's an interesting sign. But we don't know, really. They say that the co-founder of the order, Dimitri Semelas, was able to see what the entity was behind you. So he could say to Agathos, yes, you're the third level Rayon. There are different weird naming conventions for different traditions for the spiritual family. And who knows? But what I do know is that Agathos, George was in awe of him because he was in Cairo with Agathos. And he sort of said, he was amazing. You just can't imagine. So I've come to, well, it may be better, it may not be better. If you are in front of such a person, you devolve all your being to this other person. You can save me.
Yeah.
Nobody can save you except yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the problem. So that a lot of the Greeks, and I suspect in Paris, they're all waiting for the return of, Marie and Semelas. They'll come and save us. No. We have to do it for ourselves.
Exactly. Very.
Nobody can do it for you. Who can, as George would say, who can digest your food for you? Can somebody else do that? No. Well, you have to digest your own emotions. You have to digest your own thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it comes down to. I doubt that is being taught in many places. And I certainly know in Denver, Colorado, for 20 odd years, 30 odd years, maybe more, 40 years, they haven't even produced one initiator.
Wow.
Because that person is not allowed, because the big leader, the big cheese, wants to be in micromanagement, total control.
Wow. Well, yeah, that's very. Well, you know what, Mr. Pugh?
Coming from a different area,
Exactly.
I'm completely different from all these people.
Mm.
And they've given up communicating with me because they don't understand my understanding.
Oh.
They want me to conform to their belief system. So
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a wild cannon, but I think it's the right way for people to be free.
Well, and I appreciate you coming on here and imparting some of this knowledge, Mr. Pugh. Thank you for your time today, and all the best on your journey and your continued success on your journey, sir.
Well, thank you, Stan. You be safe out there.
Okay, thank you, sir. Kevin Pugh, brothers and sisters. How did you feel about that? I personally learned a lot during that conversation, and I will say that it was not a interview. It was actually a discussion or a conversation. In some cases, a very deep discussion. I will admit that I tried to edit this particular segment and just decided to, due to the content and the level of content in this conversation, I just decided to publish this particular segment of Points of Light Radio edit free. I encourage you to watch and rewatch this particular segment. There's a lot to learn here. And as I predicted, the Order of the Lily and the Eagle is a very deep organization. It really is. And I loved how Mr. Pugh talked about his involvement in the Order of the Lily and the Eagle as a journey, because that's really what it is when you join these particular fraternal organizations. It's a journey. It can be very interesting and very fulfilling. And as I said, I don't know about you, but I enjoyed this conversation. Had you ever heard of the Order of the Lily and the Eagle? I mean, I got to admit, I hadn't until very recently. And as I said, I enjoyed having Mr. Pugh on here, and I hope to maybe have him back or someone else from the Order of the Lily and Eagle so we can get more perspective on this particular organization. But I'm afraid I'll have to let you go for now. Before I go, I want to remind you that this podcast is available on both YouTube and Spreaker. Please share, like, and subscribe when viewing Points of Light Radio on YouTube. I also welcome your comments and input. You can follow Points of Light Radio on my Facebook page at facebook.com/Points of Light Radio. My Twitter handle is at PO Light Radio. You can see the link to my Spotify channel, as well as my Points of Light Radio store, where you can go and purchase some of this stylish Points of Light Radio merchandise, as well as some fraternal merchandise on there that might interest you. I also want to point out that Points of Light Radio is available to advertise your fraternal store or event. Just get in touch with me via my Facebook page. But brothers and sisters, I'm sorry to pirate with you, but until we meet again, just step into the light.